Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Chicago Med can't keep repeating the same Lenox twist and expect us not to notice. There have been a lot of twist developments in Chicago Med Season 10, but the writers need to stop reusing one particular story twist involving Caitlin Lenox. Twists are something that the show does well, and just about every member of Chicago Med's cast experiences their share of unexpected plot turns by the time they move on from Daphne. The series often delivers its twists in an especially gut-punching way. Why is no small part of how Chicago Med became NBC's top drama. Caitlin Lenox has her head on a bit straighter than most of her colleagues, so her role in more dramatic story beats is often straightforward and sometimes antagonistic. She's an extremely logical person, and Lenox's refusal to treat people with kid gloves can often cause tensions. And while that's not to say she's logical to the point of lacking emotion, the writers might want to dial back their reliance on one specific twist regarding Caitlin's personality if they want to avoid her growing stale ahead of Chicago Med Season 11. As if Daphne wasn't overworked enough in the wake of a fellow hospital's closure and Mitch Ripley's suspension, Chicago Med Season 10, Episode 14 hands Lenox and Frost an emergency patient with a gunshot wound to the heart. Patient Braden Whitlocker's brother Jeremiah admits to accidentally shooting Braden when he thought there was an intruder breaking into his mother Olivia's house, but Frost quickly notices a slide bite on Olivia's hand and deduces that she fired the weapon. Jeremiah's only taking the fall because the gun was unregistered, and going to jail would mean Olivia losing custody of Braden. Lenox cautions Frost against getting involved because they aren't cops, so the Whitlockers' legal concerns aren't Daphne's problem. That changes when it's learned that Olivia thought she was firing at Braden's abusive father. Lenox then does a full skeletal workup to establish evidence of Braden's abuse and gives it to the police before approaching Braden's dad and challenging him to punch her in retribution. Frost is awed that Caitlin did an unnecessary skeletal workup to help with a non-medical issue, but this isn't exactly the first time she has gotten involved in a patient's life after advising against it. Lenox helping Braden already shouldn't be colored as surprising, since doctors in most states are mandated to report suspected abuse. But it's also not a twist, because this isn't the first time Caitlin's gotten personally invested. In Season 10, Episode 10, Lenox opens up about her childhood to encourage a patient to separate from his conjoined twin. She provides an extremely vulnerable origin story for her bluntly honest demeanor, simply because she knows the patient's not being open with his brother about wanting surgery. After that, it's hardly surprising that she has enough compassion to help an abuse victim. In the same episode, Caitlin commits a possible ethics violation to help a criminal. Prior to Sully's unexpected death on Chicago Med, Ripley asks Lenox to perform unnecessary tests to keep Sully from getting discharged back to prison. Lenox gives Ripley a similar lecture about professional ethics to the one she gives Frost regarding the Whitlockers, but she ultimately relents and promises to help. After her vulnerability with the twins and bending the rules for Ripley, Caitlin's compassion should never be treated like a twist again. But if Chicago Med's intent on doing so, there might be a way. The easiest way to keep the twist of Lenox breaking her own professional rules and boundaries from getting stale is, somewhat ironically, to double down on establishing her rules and boundaries. As of now, Caitlin's professional boundaries are somewhat vaguely defined. Perhaps she wouldn't have involved herself in the Whitlockers' legal matters if not for the abuse, although reporting a suspicion and performing full-body x-rays require very different levels of involvement. If Caitlin's concept of professional boundaries were more clearly defined, it would be easier to surprise viewers when she makes exceptions. Now that Lenox and Archer's rivalry appears to have been resolved and her storylines are becoming more personally revealing, this shouldn't be difficult to accomplish. Chicago Med doesn't need to change any of Caitlin's basic character traits, but a deeper understanding of her personal values would explain why she's willing to let Braden's brother go to jail over a lie despite giving a heartfelt speech about honesty just a few episodes prior. Without that understanding, treating her compassion as surprising just feels like withholding information for the sake of forcing a twist. Chicago Med has never been shy about recycling plotlines, After all, there are only so many medical emergencies a hospital can handle before things start to feel familiar. But the show's recent overuse of the Dr. Mitch Lenox is a wild card who bends the rules and gets away with it storyline is getting harder to ignore. What started as an intriguing new character arc has quickly become a tired gimmick, and if Chicago Med doesn't course correct soon, they might lose the audience's goodwill. When Dr. Lenox was introduced last season, he brought an undeniable energy to the hospital. His unorthodox methods, refusal to play by the book, and devil-may-care attitude made him an instant standout. He clashed with Dr. Archer, infuriated Goodwin, and impressed Dr. Halstead, even if he wouldn't admit it. His charm was undeniable, and for a while, his unpredictability worked. The problem? The writers are leaning on the same twist every time. Lenox takes a risky, unauthorized medical approach. Everyone tells him he's reckless. He saves the patient anyway. Someone higher up threatens consequences, but at the last minute, Goodwin or Archer decides he's valuable enough to keep around. Rinse and repeat. The first time it was compelling. Lenox defied a superior to perform an unconventional surgery, saving a young girl who had been misdiagnosed. The stakes felt high, the tension real. But by the third or fourth time it became clear that the show was falling into a pattern. There's never real fallout. No matter how much trouble Lenox causes, he always skates by with little more than a slap on the wrist. It's not that fans don't love a rogue doctor, they do. But without true consequences, his storylines feel weightless. Lenox's character also risks making the other doctors look incompetent. When he swoops in with some bold, last-minute medical miracle that contradicts his colleagues' more cautious approaches, it diminishes their expertise. It's as if the rest of the staff, many of whom have been on the show for years, exist only to serve as obstacles for Lenox to prove wrong. That kind of writing weakens the ensemble dynamic, which has always been one of Chicago Med's strengths. Even worse, the show isn't just recycling the Lenox breaks the rules and gets away with it formula, it's recycling it within the same season. In just a handful of episodes, he's already overruled a senior doctor to perform a controversial treatment on a comatose patient, ignored protocol to administer an experimental drug without approval, conducted an off-the-books procedure that miraculously worked, been scolded by Goodwin or Archer, only for them to reluctantly let it slide. If the writers insist on making Lenox the show's resident bad boy, they need to up the stakes. Give him actual consequences, make him face suspension, let a risky decision backfire in a way he can't fix, or force him to prove himself in a way that doesn't rely on bending the rules. Otherwise, viewers will see through the pattern and Lenox's impact will diminish. Chicago Med has pulled off complex, character-driven storytelling in the past. They've handled moral dilemmas with nuance and given their doctors arcs with real growth. But when it comes to Lenox, they seem content to hit the same beats over and over. That needs to change. Because at some point, the audience will stop believing that every gamble he takes will work out. And worse, they'll stop caring.